forward to the update from Commissioner Cho. In the short time I have, I'd like to ask for your help getting the word out on two exciting initiatives. First, as you may know, at the onset of the pandemic, PSE developed the COVID Bill Assistance Program, formerly known as KCAP, to help residential customers facing financial hardship due to COVID-19. That program was so successful that we've been authorized to renew and expand the program in 2021. This program allows customers to receive up to $2,500 in additional utility bill pay assistance, up to $2,500 to forgive past balances for customers who have received energy assistance in the past, and customers can receive extended payment plans up to 18 months and the option to change their energy bill's due date. Customers qualify based on their income, and you can visit pse.com/assistance to learn more about income requirements. That's also the website where customers can apply for assistance. Please share this information with your community, friends, and family. We're all in this together, and PSE is here to help. The other item I want to mention is about our transition to a clean energy future. Earlier this year, PSE announced its aspirational goal to becoming a beyond net zero carbon energy company by 2045. There are different components that will help us get there, including the state's Clean Energy Transformation Act, a groundbreaking law that sets clean energy targets for our electric supply. We're now developing a new clean electric energy plan with equity and community interests in mind, and we want your input to shape the plan. I'm pleased to announce the launch of PSE's Clean Electricity Benefits Survey, which we will use to inform PSE's first clean energy implementation plan, a 4-year roadmap to guide our clean electricity investments. The survey will be available until June 1st and is available in various languages. Samantha's team has the link to the survey and will be sharing it in the Facebook stream. Thanks, Samantha. Thanks for your time and the opportunity to share these two initiatives with you. Now I'll hand it back to Samantha.
Great, thank you, David. We appreciate your sponsorship of this event. Puget Sound Energy has been a great partner for our Kirkland Chamber, particularly through COVID, so thank you.
Thank you.
And now we get to our main event. These virtual events, you know, we try and move these things along because we know your time is valuable, and we are so excited to be featuring Commissioner Cho from Port of Seattle today, who, as I said, is a Kirkland resident. He is the son of immigrants from South Korea who came to the United States through the Port of Seattle. He is currently the only person of color serving on the commission. He has quite a long resume and quite a long bio, but I will say that he has served as a legislative assistant to Washington State Senator, member of the United States Congress, for whom he managed a portfolio of foreign affairs, trade, small business, and financial services. So we are really excited to have him speak to the chamber today. So Commissioner Cho, welcome.
Thank you so much, Samantha. And real quickly, while my staff is pulling up the slides here, just want to also take a moment to thank PSE and David for all their great work during this pandemic. I remember this time last year, actually, when the pandemic was just starting, talking to one of your colleagues, David, Julian Lowe, about how we can help communities who are struggling with their bills. And so I really appreciate all the work PSE has done. And I think it's going a long way in keeping people's heads above water here. Awesome. All right. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity to give you an update on the port, to introduce myself to my community. Again, my name is Sam Cho. I'm a commissioner at the Port of Seattle. I'm also a proud Kirkland resident. So this presentation is very special to me. And I'm here to kind of give you an overview of the state of the port, really, and I'll answer any questions you have about our operations and our priorities. So we'll get started here. I'm going to share a little bit about our history, just to level set on our organization. I think a lot of people aren't always sure what the Port of Seattle entails. And so for some of you who are deeply engaged, this might be redundant, but bear with me here. I also want to highlight some of the ways we've been working directly with the city of Kirkland and Kirkland businesses, which obviously is very relevant to this audience. And then share what we are prioritizing in terms of recovering from COVID, and what we look forward to when it comes to an equitable recovery, quite frankly. All right, just a real primer on the port, our mission. The port was founded in 1911 as a special purpose government by the vote of the people. And then a lot of people ask, why was the port established what was it prior to that? The voters of Washington actually chose to establish public ports to make sure that elected representatives were accountable to the people, and that we had public officials deciding some of our economic development opportunities. It was actually an attempt to stop the railroad companies from taking over our waterfront. And so, 100 years later, we're still here promoting economic opportunities and quality of life in the region by advancing things like trade, travel, commerce, job creation in the most equitable and accountable and, quite frankly, environmentally sustainable manner possible. And so, I think it's safe to say that today, every single one of Washington's key industries depends on our services. In fact, the statistic is often said that 40% of jobs in Washington is tied to trade in some way. But despite that, you probably don't really think about the port on your day-to-day. But if you're shopping or selling anything, if you're eating or catching anything, or growing, and especially if you're traveling, our airport, our seaport, they're a part of your daily life in this region. And we're connecting Washington industries with customers and markets, not just within Washington, but all over the world. And so, we're really an entity where no news is good news. And generally, if you're not thinking about us, it's a good thing, because we're doing our jobs right, and we'll make your lives easier, so to speak. We're also a major platform for economic activity. In fact, that's kind of our purpose, and we operate some of the most critical assets of statewide significance. All of Washington's key economic sectors actually depend on our airport and our seaport for trade and travel. For instance, the region's commercial fishing industry depends upon our best-in-class commercial fishing terminals. In fact, if you've ever seen the Discovery show, The Deadliest Catch, those ships are actually home ported here in Seattle. And when it's fishing season, they actually go from Seattle up to Alaska to do all the crabbing and the fishing, and they come in home port here in Seattle. And so our commercial industry, first fishing industry, is very, very significant. All the seafood that we enjoy here is really thanks to that industry. In addition to that, our marinas, cruise industry, real estate division, they all generate more than $1 billion in business activity for the region. Everything from supplying ships with local food, beer, wine, maintenance, and fuel, to supporting tourism and leisure spending. But our facilities and services are not only about work. We also like to think of ourselves as connecting cultures. We provide services that launch trips, and for trips of a lifetime for most families. And we're really honored to be part of that adventure for most families. And then, on the maritime side, we're very, very proud of our long heritage serving in this region. You'll see some photos here of historical pictures of the port, and sometimes it blows me away how far we've come, in our journey of serving this region as a public service entity. We've continued to evolve and innovate in the last 100 years, especially in the 21st century, as we try to become more and more competitive. And so to that light, I wanted to give you all an update and share with you some of our maritime industries and how we're embracing sustainability and innovation, and how we're keeping our region as globally competitive as we possibly can, because that's kind of what our big focus is, to make sure that our Pacific Northwest region and the Puget Sound region is competitive. So first is the Maritime Innovation Center. And if you've ever been to Fisherman's Terminal, you've probably seen the very historic but empty Seattle Ship Supply building. This building has been out of use due to some structural issues for quite some time. But most recently, we actually approved the plan for it to be reconstructed and reborn as a Maritime Innovation Center. And so what this will do is actually, it's going to house what we have called the Maritime Accelerator Program, which is currently in its second class. It's a class of startups in the maritime industry that we incubate and we provide resources and connections to so that they can actually take their product to market. And through this program, we've brought together things over 20 maritime startups to grow their sales, their marketing, and their finance. And we've actually, we launched our first Maritime Accelerator. It was last year, and this year we just took on a second class. A lot of people actually didn't know that we have one of these like startup accelerator programs focused on maritime. And our vision is to be a globally competitive hub for the maritime industry. And so we're really focusing on connecting entrepreneurs to industry, to market leaders, and quite frankly, funders, right? Venture capital funders, to help these businesses scale and level up and grow. And so we're very excited about this. One thing that we do that a lot of accelerators or incubators don't do is that we actually don't take equity in these accelerators, in these startups. We just provide the resources that we know that we have are unique, and we help these companies grow. So it's not like these companies are being told to give up equity in their startups. We are just providing it as a public service. The next one here is the Terminal 5 modernization. If you live anywhere near West Seattle, you'll see that Terminal 5 is going under some heavy construction. Our expectation is for Terminal 5 to open on the first quarter of 2022. So Q1 of 2022 is our target. And this modernization project with the Northwest Seaport Alliance is a critical component of expanding our cargo handling capability. And it's actually going to be one of our premier international container terminals, and one of the best and most modern container terminals on the West Coast, which is going to allow our region to, again, remain globally competitive. And just to give you all kind of a sense of the global landscape here, is that in the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen increased competition, not just from our traditional competitors like, excuse me, that's my phone. Not just from our traditional competitors like LA Long Beach, but ports of Prince Rupert and Port of Vancouver. Canada has been investing tremendously in their ports on the West Coast. And so we've been steadily losing market share over the years due to the expansion of those two ports up north in Canada, which is why the Northwest Seaport Alliance was actually formed back in, I think it was 2015 or 16, is to reduce the competition between Tacoma and Seattle and to join forces. And this investment in T5, it was a joint agreement between the two ports. And it's going to allow us to bring in some ships that historically we have not been able to bring in because our cranes weren't big enough or facilities couldn't handle a load. Big ship, it's called being big ship ready. And these ships are huge. They're 18,000 TEUs, which means that they have 18,000 20-foot containers on them. And so we're really looking forward to opening that in Q1 of 2022. Just a few other things to really quickly go over. The Northwest Clean Air Strategy. I mentioned that we have a robust sustainability effort. And earlier this year, we joined with the Port of Tacoma, the Seaport Alliance, and the Port of Vancouver up in Canada to adopt a regional strategy to phase out all maritime emissions by 2050. I'm going to repeat that again. We are aiming to phase out all maritime emissions by the year 2050. And we are working on an implementation plan right now. Some of these areas we expect to zero out in the next 5 to 10 years, quite honestly. We think we can get there, but it's a pretty huge transformation to move maritime to zero emissions because there's a lot of industry partners that are going to be affected by this. But I think with the help of those industry partners and the aggressive policy that we're setting, we will get there. The other thing that I want to point out here is that the Northwest Port Clean Air Strategy is very significant because it's not just the Port of Seattle doing this, it's a regional approach. And I want to emphasize how important that is from a competitive standpoint. Oftentimes, when we do environmental regulations, it's often seen as bad for growth or bad for business because it increases the price of doing business. But when you actually have an entire region doing it, when you have Port of Tacoma, Port of Vancouver doing it, you're actually eliminating the loss of competitiveness issue because someone might leave the port of Seattle to go do business at Tacoma, but if Tacoma is also doing what we're doing, then obviously that's no longer a factor. And so I can't emphasize enough how this regional approach is important to making sure that we're not only hitting our sustainability goals, but we're also not becoming less competitive as a result of it. Real quickly, these other ones, Maritime High School. I know that folks on the east side may not have heard too much about Maritime High School, but we're helping local partners start a new academy focused on the maritime industry. As you all know, there's a aviation high school, which focuses on the aviation industry. But my colleague Ryan Calkins rightly pointed out that it's time for a maritime academy. And so currently we're enrolling the freshman class for the 2021-2022 school year. It'll be the Maritime High School will be part of Highline School District. And Highline is already running some schools, is already running the region's aviation high school in the airport. So they're already experienced in doing aviation academy, and now they're going into the maritime side. So really thrilled to see that academy. It's going to really address the shortage of labor workers in the maritime industry that we're hearing from industry partners. And so if any of you folks have kids who might have an interest in maritime high school, I realize it might be out of the way, but perhaps you should consider enrolling in it. I believe it's a lotto system and it's oversubscribed right now. So we've been getting great feedback. And then lastly, on the maritime side, the waterfront clean energy. One of our most important environmental strategies is to actually eliminate the use of fossil fuels along our waterfront. So we're actually working with our partners on electrification of our waterfront, or some people like to call it offshore power. Some people call it, the industry people will call it cold ironing. But essentially what this means is that when the cruise ships come into our ports, when these container ships come into the ports, we need the infrastructure to allow them to plug their ships into the electrical grid, as opposed to keeping their engines running while they're docked. A lot of people don't realize like a cruise ship is like a floating city with rooms and kitchens and whatnot. And so they're actually constantly keeping their engines running when they're docked. And so we want to eliminate that by allowing them to plug into our grid as opposed to keeping polluting our airs. And so we're working really aggressively towards electrifying our waterfront. All right, moving on to the airport, which is the other side of our operations. The airport was dedicated in 1949. You can see here in the slide some really old school photos of Seatac when it was first built out. It's pretty amazing how much we've grown in the last 10 years. And in 2019, Seatac International Airport was the 8th busiest airport in North America, and considered a top 10 airport for connectivity to the US and to global destinations. We did, I think the number is between 50 and 55 million passengers through Seatac Airport. The airport was initially built for a capacity of 16 million, I believe. And when we did a study, I think they said that our max capacity was 30 million. And so we are far beyond the capacity that the airport was originally built for. And so this has been a unique challenge of ours. And obviously COVID has slowed things down a little bit for us, but we expect things to recover. And if you see this map here, you can really see that we're a hub for everywhere in the world, especially Asia, being that we are on the West Coast. We're a hub for Delta and a lot of other international airlines for Asia flights. This map probably gets you dreaming about your post-COVID life. I know I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to be traveling, but we are perfectly situated halfway between Europe and Asia. And so we have a nice balance between leisure travel and business travel, obviously with a lot of big major corporations like Amazon, Microsoft, and Boeing in the area. We have a lot of business travel going through our airport, which actually puts us in a unique situation in the recovery, in the short term and long term. In fact, one of the really positive signs of long-term strength of our market is a lot of new services that we launched during the pandemic. So in case you didn't know, during the pandemic, we actually launched a new route with Qatar Airways. We now have a direct flight between Seattle and Doha. And we also launched some other flights. We're also launching other flights to India and Asia that previously didn't exist. And so we're very, very excited for some of the growth opportunities here. Within the context of COVID, obviously we think customer service is about opportunities that are big and small. Last year, we actually did a rebranding of our airport. And so you may have noticed that the logo of the airport has changed. And we launched our new brand. It's called SEA. And then we actually launched what we call Fly Healthy at SEA. And it's really our multi-layered health and safety strategy in response to COVID. And you may have seen, or maybe you haven't seen because you haven't at the airport, we've been constantly innovating new programs to make our airport safe, but also streamlined. And one of the really great programs that we've actually launched today that I really want to make sure everyone is aware of. And if there's anything you take away from today's presentation, it is this new program that I'm very excited about. That is the Spot SCA, Spot Saver SCA. And if you've ever flown through Seatac, you've been through those really long security lines that really, make the experience not as great. The security lines can get really, really bad. And so what we did is we're actually piloting this new program called Spot Saver. And it's actually a program that allows you to sign up for a line in the security queue virtually. It's a virtual queue. And basically you sign up for a time slot and you can show up at that time slot at the security line. And you can go through security without having to wait in line the whole time. And so this is a pilot program that we're doing with Alaska Airlines and Delta Airlines for now through the month of August. And so if you are flying through Delta or Alaska in the next 3 months, you will get an email or a notification from that airline saying that you can actually sign up for a spot before you get to the airport in the security line. And all you need to do is walk up to the security line, the designated security line checkpoint at that time. This does not require pre-check. You do not have to have clear. It's 100% free. And so this is why it's so great, because it actually doesn't cost the traveler anything. I'm very, very excited about this. And I really encourage you to take advantage of this and give us some feedback on how that worked out for you. Later this year, we're also going to announce food delivery services inside the airport. We think this is also going to reduce some line standing and reduce some face-to-face transactions. So look out for updates on that. We are also constantly expanding the number of shops and restaurants. Our airport dining and retail is working hard to make sure that we're expanding the variety and the choices that you have when you travel to the airport. Together with these big and small tenants, we're working to make sure that your travel experience is as best as it possibly can, given the crazy growth. Pivoting real quick to reopening what's going on in terms of the construction and the build out. I mentioned that we are way over capacity at Seatac and we need to keep up with the growth. There's 2 major projects right now at the Seatac airport that is really exciting, billions of dollars of investment over the last 5 to 10 years. The first one is the North Satellite modernization. This summer, we're going to be opening the second phase of North Satellite. We're going to have more gates. We're going to have a performance stage for live performances. There's going to be new shops and restaurants at the North Satellite area. It's been a construction for several years now. You may have seen how the first phase of the North Satellite has changed. And we are in the final stages of that second phase coming up to opening, and it's beautiful. High ceilings, natural light, great dining opportunities. If you've been to North Satellite recently, you can pretty much get a sense of what it's like. And North Satellite is really the terminal for Alaska Airlines. So if you fly Alaska, most likely you'll be going through North Satellite. The other one is the International Arrivals Facility, which we hope we're going to be opening by the end of the year, assuming we don't have any further delays. Both projects basically modernizes decades-old spaces that didn't really meet the needs and the customer experience standards that we hold ourselves to. It's the international arrivals facility was actually a completely new build out. It was attached to our existing facilities, our A terminal. You may have seen pictures of the sky bridge that we had to install, going from the S gates, which is our international gates, to the international arrivals facility. I believe it's one of a kind in the country, at least in North America, and it's the only bridge where you actually have planes going under it, which is pretty fascinating. So I really encourage you, if you ever go out to Seatac, to take a look at the bridge. It has a beautiful view of Mount Rainier on a clear day, and we're very, very excited for the opening of IAF. A few other modernization projects in the long run, even though have these two projects coming online. We have Concourse C expansion, where it's a new project to widen and raise the ceiling and generally just improve the first few hundred feet of Concourse C. We're going to add, I think, 5 floors to Concourse C with some retail space, some lounge space, and some office space for our tenants. We're also looking at renovating South Satellite renovation. I just mentioned South Satellite as our international terminal, our gate terminals. That building has not been updated since the 70s. And so we're about to begin the modernization and the update of South Satellite. And then if you know where the Alaska Ticketing Center is, it's like the first ticketing booth on the very zone, we call it zone 6 and 7 at the airport, but it's the very first ticketing booths in our area. That is also being modernized. We are partnering with Alaska to redo those ticketing areas to raise the ceiling, give more light, natural light. It's gonna be beautiful. And so all in all, we're looking at about $3.7 billion of capital projects over 5 years. And this includes all the projects that I just mentioned, and all the projects that we're going to be moving forward with. And so we really see this as a huge economic boost to the region, especially when it comes to creating good jobs for the region. As your port, we're really committed to the communities throughout King County, which is why we've worked with the city of Kirkland as we've evolved over the years. And if you're a Kirkland resident like I am, you've also seen and witnessed the change of Kirkland itself over the several years. I understand we have some city council members here, and I think they've been doing a tremendous job of really capturing our region's growth. I go to Totem Lake and downtown Kirkland, and I'm just amazed by all the growth that we're seeing. And going to school here in Finn Hill, I went to Carl Sandburg. It's just insane, and it's really great to see. We're seeing obviously a lot of office space by major employers like Google, Tableau. I just want to give a real quick shout out to Lady Yum, a local favorite. It's one of my favorites at the airport. I see they put a slide-in picture. I gotta say, I do this thing called Small Business Saturdays, where I actually go around to small business owner, takes pictures, I buy something, and I post it on my social media accounts. And this kiosk here is the Lady Yum kiosk at Seatac. And obviously, Lady Yum has a retail store in downtown Kirkland. I actually lived in London for a while, and so I actually have had La Durée, which is like the original macaroons. And I gotta say, Lady Yum is pretty spot on and close to the original macaroons that La Durée makes. And so I'm very impressed and just wanted to give them a quick shout out. On that note, I just wanted to highlight that we're really, really proud to be working with the city of Kirkland and Kirkland in general through what we have, the grant program we have, the Economic Development Grant Partnership Program. I believe in 2020, Kirkland was awarded $60,000 by the Port of Seattle towards their Startup 425 and Restartup 425 programs, as well as a Shop Local Kirkland campaign. And we also did a SCA Airport Spotlight program for Kirkland, where Kirkland had a spotlight ad at the airport in 2020. And so we're very, very proud to be partners with Kirkland and to promote my home city, and really looking forward to kind of seeing how we can continue that work. And then lastly, here is what are we thinking about in terms of recovery? I think we are past the brunt. Hopefully, we're not going back any phases today. I understand the governor is going to make an announcement later, but I think we are with the vaccinations. We're slowly starting to shift our minds to what a recovery looks like. We have a vision, obviously, to remain competitive here in Washington State and Puget Sound, but we also think in order to do that, we need to be thinking about what an equitable recovery looks like. And so we're investing. We've invested in statewide tourism. Tourism was one of the hardest hit industries, if not the hardest hit industry in our economy. And it happens to be a pretty big employer in Washington. We're working with the Washington Tourism Alliance to support efforts on the tourism side. Obviously, our small business and BIPOC business owners have been hit hard. We launched a new port initiative this year to run a business accelerator specifically for BIPOC business owners who are interested in working with the port. And so this means not just our airport dining and retail, but also contracting and procurements and all the other opportunities for business that there might be out there that we can provide to businesses in the small business and BIPOC community. And then obviously tied into all this is our commitment to ensuring that we are having a hand in workforce development and building a pipeline for the next generation of workers in maritime and aviation and just port jobs overall. I think if we've learned anything in the past year, it's shown that there's still big remnants and we're still struggling with systemic racism in our country. And it continues to impact our cities, our communities, and many of our institutions. And so we as a port have actually committed to addressing systemic racism, both internally as an institution, but also externally in how we affect the communities. So back in July of 2020, the commission passed a motion that I sponsored that establishes a comprehensive assessment of the Port of Seattle Police Department to ensure alignment with the highest national standards of best practices. And then we established a task force to lead the assessment and develop recommendations for that action. And so, we did things like ban chokeholds and the use of tear gas and other things. And our task force is coming out with further recommendations now. And I have to correct myself here. That motion was actually sponsored and led by my colleague, Peter Steinbrück. And then I passed a motion last year called the equity motion, which is one where we were actually doing kind of like an internal audit of the port on all our policies to ensure that we're not perpetuating instances of institutionalized racism through our policies. And so that is under the way for us as well. And this is the lens that we're going to be focusing on when it comes to economic recovery. We know there are things about our economy that aren't working for everyone before, and so we're really looking forward to figuring out how we can do that. And we're doing that by actually hosting listening sessions. And I know that Samantha was part of our listening session, with the business community, but the port leadership, as well as my colleagues on the commission, we are doing listening sessions throughout the county to solicit input and feedback on our equitable recovery effort. So far, we've had over 10 listening sessions. We've met with 70 participants, leaders from CB community-based organizations, elected officials, leaders from the chamber like Samantha, Bellevue, Seattle, etc. Our goal is to, at the end of the day, roll out with a port stimulus package for post-COVID recovery. And that stimulus package will be informed by the input that we're getting from community leaders, such as yourselves. But obviously after a difficult 2020, we're feeling very optimistic about what's coming out of Olympia, what we're seeing on the federal side in terms of stimulus, but also infrastructure money, and obviously some of the money that we will be putting up as a port. I really encourage you to provide feedback. These listening sessions were for some leaders that we wanted to make sure we targeted, but it's not exclusive to them. And so if you have thoughts, ideas, or comments on how the port should be contributing to our recovery, you can actually go to the link in this slide here. I'm sure that Samantha can push it out to all the members. There's a form on our website that allows you to input and type in any feedback that you might have. And I really highly encourage you to provide that feedback. I also, if you want to continue to stay engaged with the port, I invite you to follow the port on Facebook and Twitter, visit our website, watch commission meetings as mundane as they can get. We have electronic newsletters. I send out a monthly newsletter. I am also on Facebook and Twitter, Samcho Tweets. And we're your port. And so we really value your input. With that, I think I just want to thank you for your time. If we have time for questions, I'm happy to take questions today, and really open it up to anyone who wants to chime in.
Wonderful. Thank you, Commissioner. As was just mentioned, please put any questions in the chat on the Facebook feed, and we will get them over to the Commissioner. Also, if you have any questions for David Hoffman from Puget Sound Energy, you can do that as well in the chat. So our first question for Commissioner Cho is, do you have a sense of the economic impact of either in dollars or in jobs, or maybe a little bit of both, of not having a cruise ship season now for a year?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I don't have any numbers on jobs per se, but I do know that the numbers from previous year showed that every cruise goer spends on average $1,800 to $2,000 in the local economy as they go on the cruises, right? So think about people who fly in from other states to get on the cruise, people who book a hotel the night before the cruise, people who go to Pioneer Square, International District, or do touristy stuff after the cruise or before the cruise, and spend money in our local economy. As far as jobs are concerned, a lot of the jobs directly attached to cruises are actually on the cruise ships themselves, right? And so they're like the people, the janitorial service and all the other the workers on the cruise ships. From a local perspective, our brothers at the Longshore are the ones who actually, work the docks, and so they've basically lost all that dock work. And I can actually ask. We can probably ask them how much of that job is lost. There's a really fine point here, and maybe this is going too deep, but people forget that cruise is seasonal, and so most of cruise jobs are actually seasonal. And so, they work during the summers between the months of maybe March and August, September, and then, they do something else, or they go to some other part of the country, like Florida, where there's a year-round cruise season. And so, the cruise industry is an odd one, but it would be hard for us to know like how many jobs were lost from that second degree, that 1 degree removed, right? The small business owners who no longer get that business because there's no more cruise goers. I think that's the real impact, and it'll be really hard to really disaggregate that data and look at, well, how much of the business was lost was because of the cruise. But it's an interesting question. I know that's not a direct answer, but I hope that gives you a little bit of insight.
Thank you. The next question is there any chance of getting high-speed internet to Terminal 91, Fisherman's Terminal, and Maritime Industrial Center?
That's an excellent question, and it speaks to the broader question of broadband access. I think one of the things that we learned during COVID is that access to internet and high-speed internet in an era where we're on Zoom like this is not widespread. What's interesting about this is that the port actually now has broadband authority. It was an authority that we lobbied for, or advocated for, I should say, with the state legislature in the last 2 years. Governor Inslee was a supporter of this broadband authority. And so not only are we looking into providing broadband to the areas you just mentioned, we're actually thinking about, or my colleague Ryan Calkins and I are really trying to push our staff to look into, this might actually make Carrie a little uncomfortable, my staff are a little uncomfortable, but we're pushing to look into how we can actually be a provider of broadband internet to all of King County. And actually, we now have the order to go beyond King County, the rural areas of King County. And so, my colleague Ryan will say, we started as a seaport, we became an airport, and it's time we became a tech port or an e-port. And so that's kind of what we're thinking about here for the long term. And so your point is well taken. I think it's something that will take a lot of studying to do, but it's definitely on our radar.
Great. And what does it look like in terms of a return for a cruise ship season moving forward? I know a lot of people have the same question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's constantly up in the air. I actually got briefed on this yesterday. It's looking like cruise is going to be on pause at least through, I would say, June or July. We still need approval from the CDC. What they're doing now, and actually, I don't know if this is, I got privilege information, whatever. What they're trying to do is actually start doing vaccine clinics for the cruise industry specifically. And we're waiting on guidance from the CDC on how we can do that. But there's going to be some cruise this season. We expect in August or September. They're not going to be the large cruises. They're going to be the small ones. It's going to be 50% capacity, right? It's not going to be as crowded, obviously. One of the things, and again, it's getting a little wonky here, is that we are actually our hands are tied a little bit because our cruise is mainly to Alaska. And one of the logistical challenges is that when you go from Seattle to Alaska and back, you actually have to stop by the port of Vancouver or an international port. It's this weird law called the Jones Act that you can look up later, but it requires foreign ships to stop by a foreign port you can't go from a US port to a US port. You have to stop by a foreign port. And unfortunately, Canada has banned cruises. And so until Canada kind of lifts that ban, they can't make that stop in Canada. And so we're looking, I think the cruise industry has been looking to get a waiver of the Jones Act and try to do a US port to US port. There's too much information for most folks, but the short answer is we're hoping that in August we can have limited cruise. But I think for the short term, in the next 2 months, it's just not going to happen.
Great. In terms of air travel coming out of COVID, is there any talk right now of limiting air travel in the future to only vaccinated people?
It's a great question. We struggle just to get people to wear masks at the airport, let alone get them vaccinated. As to my knowledge, there's not been any discussion about mandating vaccines on a federal level. But with that said, there's nothing stopping airlines from mandating it from an airline policy. In the same way that when COVID first started, we didn't have a mandatory mask policy at the airport because the FAA didn't put one in there. We actually eventually ended up putting one in at the airport for a terminal as a Port of Seattle, but it was kind of like a case by case, like airport by airport decision. What Alaska and Delta did is they made it a company policy that you have to wear a mask on the plane, and you've probably read about stories of people who refused and got put on blacklists and they can't fly those airlines anymore. And so we really think that, not to punt the ball to anybody, but if there isn't a federal mandate for vaccinations on airlines, we would start conversations with our private sector partners like Alaska, Delta, and other airlines to figure out a way for us to actually use the carrot or stick approach to that conversation.
Great. And then in terms of air travel and trying to space things out, is there any more talk of ramping up flights at Painfield or maybe other smaller airports around the area to try and spread a little bit of the travel through different airports?
So just to give you an understanding of where Seatac is in terms of airport volumes, I'll just give you a sense. Pre-COVID, Seatac handled about 50,000 passengers a day going through security. Okay, so this is just people going through security. This is not count people who are behind security. At the height of COVID, we dropped down to 2,500. So we went from 50,000 passengers to 2,500 passengers. Right now, we've recovered to maybe around 20, 30. And so, but we're still down 40%. And so we're at a point where the capacity is not we're not fully recovered. With that said, Payne Field has a cap on the number of flights it can go, it can have. So that's a unique challenge to Payne Field. They would need to get permission to increase the number of flights that can go in and out of the airport. And there are some other like more local political issues. Oh, is my audio okay? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure what just happened. The audio just got a little bit strange.
Still strange?
It is.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Thank you so much, Sherry.
Oh, now we can't hear you at all. I think maybe your mic might have died.
Yeah.
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's still a little bit garbled, but I think we can still make it out.
Okay, that's so weird. So to get back to the point, Payne Field has a cap. So there hasn't been any talks about expanding capacity because we're not technically at capacity because of the pandemic. On a more long-term level, some of you might know that there's a study being conducted on a third regional airport. And so because Seatac can't get any bigger, they're thinking about a third regional airport, and it's looking like it's going to be down south near Olympia, probably. Because we have Payne Field up north, we have Seatac in the middle of the state, and so we're thinking, and so folks think that maybe the Olympia area or the Tacoma area might be the appropriate area for a third airport, or middle of the state like Moses Lake. But I think that option may have been eliminated by now.
Great, thank you. I think that is all for our questions that I have that have come in. Do you have any final words for us, Commissioner Cho?
No, I just again, I just wanted to emphasize that we are currently taking feedback for the port's efforts on recovery. Come October, November, we're going to roll out with the 22 and 20 budget, and the budget will have a port stimulus, and we're going to call it a port stimulus package. It's going to include things like the city grants that we've been giving out already, some workforce development stuff, and all the other things that we could contribute to in communities. I really encourage you to go in and provide some feedback. And then lastly, real quickly, just highlighting once again that we have this really cool new virtual queuing system that I highly encourage folks to take advantage of. Again, it doesn't cost you anything. It's completely free. You don't even need to sign up for it. You're just going to get a notification from the airline that you can do this. And so please provide us some feedback on your experience with that too. But other than that, we're doing everything we can as a port to support communities. Obviously, I'm a little biased as an East Sider. I think generally the port and we call it the Port of Seattle. People don't realize it's countywide, and the East Side doesn't get as much love from the port because of our focus on the airport and the maritime side. But I'm really happy to be in the commission as an East Sider, and I'm really looking forward to getting more engaged on the East Side with you all to see how we can increase our presence. So thank you so much. Thank you, Samantha, again, David, and everyone else who's here today. And feel free to reach out to me, please. I'll make sure that my staff circulate my email address too. So if you want to follow up after today's presentation.
Great. Thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you to all of the Port of Seattle for the great work that you're doing. Thank you so much to David Hoffman from Puget Sound Energy for being here today. We appreciate your sponsorship. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send them to the Kirkland Chamber office, send them to info@kirklandchamber.org, and we will make sure to pass them along to either Commissioner Cho or Puget Sound Energy if you have any questions for either of them. So thank you again for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can hop on and download.
We're off the stream. Thank you, everybody.